Hi everybody, good evening and welcome to the United Stand. I'm Mark Goldbridge and this is your latest Manchester United news and transfer news as PSG express an interest in Marcus Rashford. It's like 2 years ago. Also, we're understanding what the fee would be for Ugarte, but could it involve Marcus Rashford? We'll talk about Kerkez, a new update on him. We've been linked to a Swiss winger tonight as well. We've also got the potential of a double deal happening for Manchester United tomorrow. We'll talk about that as well. And a lot of other things as well. I will be honest with you at the start, I'm highly irritable. It's got nothing to do with you. I had a bit of a hot pudding that was too hot and it nearly took my tongue off. And also, not only hot pudding, it is hot. I just feel quite bleh today. We're crap in this country with hot weather because we don't have aircon. So when we get the 4 days a year where it's boiling, it's like living in a bloody sauna. So I am in a bit of an irritable mood. My tongue is sore. I'm hot. And yeah, that's the only reason for it. I'm just in a bit of a moody mood tonight. So apologies in advance if you get short thrift. But look, I'll try and keep it upbeat. Let's fly straight into the story. So Ben Jacobs was on MUFC MPB today, I think. Anyway, I've read this quote. Ben Jacobs has said that Manchester United and PSG have discussed Marcus Rashford as part of these conversations that are ongoing. Obviously, we know Mary Earps, the female goalkeeper, is going to PSG. We know that there was an Ugarte story, which we've got a little bit more on as well from Ben Jacobs, actually. But Marcus Rashford has apparently been discussed with PSG. So, look, we can run a poll. People are saying, please run a poll on it. I can run a poll. There's no problem about that. I've got to say, I don't actually believe it. I don't. I really don't. Look, I can give you the honest assessment of this. I don't even think it should be Rashford's choice. I think some people say if Rashford wants to go, he can go. If he wants to stay, he can stay. I think that realistically, it's Manchester United's choice. I think the evidence is there, whether you want to build with this player or not. Now, the player that we've been linked to by Di Marzio is Ndoye at Bologna, who has played reasonably well in the Euros for the Swiss, but has also been part of Nice and been on loan with Luzon previously. Now, he's a right-footed winger as well. So Manchester United definitely seem to be, well, we know Elise was a player that we were looking at. Man United definitely, whether we get one or not, what you can't argue is that, oh, God. Told you I was irritable. I'm just going to try and sit still and just focus on the mouth. Manchester United are definitely looking at wingers. We know that. It's absolutely obvious. Like, we wanted Elise, we've been linked to Neto, we've been linked to lots of other players as well. Man United want a winger, and yet why do we want a winger? Why would we want a winger? We've got Rashford, we've got Ahmad, we've got Anthony, we've got Garnacho, and that's before you've sold Sancho and Greenwood, if you sell Sancho and Greenwood. So why are Man United looking for a winger, and who's the expendable one? So I think one winger could well be part of the plans to sell. And as we know, over the last few weeks and months, it's always been out there that United will listen to offers for anybody apart from Garnacho, Mainu, Rasmus, Bruno, and probably Delo. So Anthony, Ahmad, Rashford, are they available if people put an offer in? So look, the way I look at it is, I've said it before, if PSG want Rashford, I think it's a good deal. If PSG want Rashford, I think it's a good deal for Man United. And if PSG want Rashford, I think it's a good deal for Rashford. I think you're a footballer, a club wants you, and a club wants to sell you. You go. But it's not that simple. This isn't Marcus Rashford, who's been here for a few years, who is from France. This is Marcus Rashford, who is Manc born and bred, who knows that his brand is never going to live up to anything that it has at Manchester United and doesn't want to leave Manchester United because he's from the area. So you've got a player there that doesn't want to go. You've then got a club that really buys into that as well. You know, Manc born and bred, he's been here since he was a kid, we can't let him go. Now, some would disagree with that mentality and say, what is that mentality? What other club does that, really? You know, he's not Steven Gerrard. Why does it matter that he's been part of the youth setup? Why is everybody obsessed about that being a reason to keep him? And, you know, that's debatable. One way or another, it's debatable. But I think that will be the reason he doesn't go. I don't think he'll go because I don't think he actually has the ambition to leave Manchester United, because he doesn't want to leave Manchester United. as I said, if he wasn't from our youth setup, I think he's gone. I think it's the most obvious thing in the world. You've had 2 bad seasons out of 3. You've had a really bad season off the pitch where you've damaged your reputation with the fans. All this is winnable back, by the way, and I think he will win it back. I think he will stay. I've said that for a long time, but I think it's very logical at 26 to go and have a career elsewhere and a fresh start and a reset. In fact, it's the easy choice. In some ways, is he not taking the more difficult option by trying to turn round something that many people say can't be is immovable? So I think what you've got to remember amongst all this is that it's easy to love, hate, or sit on the fence. But the way I look at it is the easy option is to, get a fresh start. Get a fresh start. You hold a PSG shirt up, they're going to love you. You're going to live off that for 2 years. You're going to be 28 before they even give a shit. You're going to walk into Paris, holding the shirt, massive club in the Champions League. They're going to absolutely love you for 2 years. And if you play well, they'll love you for longer. So it's the easy path if PSG want him. The harder path is to come back to Man United and win over some very, very some very hard to convince critics. So, I think it's the harder path. But I don't think he'll go. I mean, it'd be a lot of money coming into Manchester United, which would be helpful. But I don't. And look, I'm not here to knock what Ben Jacobs is saying, that Rashford's been discussed between Manchester United and PSG. I'm not here to knock that, but I just don't think it'll happen. What's your opinion on Calafiori? Says Zindy. Look, I think he's really good. I think that there's a bit of a hipster hype around him at the moment because he's been playing well in the Euros. I never saw anybody mentioning him when he was at Bologna last season. I very rarely saw his name in the live chat, and I do 2 shows a day for the last year, and I've never heard anybody really talk about him. So, look, he looks a very good player. Very, very good player, and Italian defender. I'd take him on that, but we're not looking at him. He'll sign for Juventus. Will the United stand be submitting a bid for Old Trafford naming rights? Says Fernando. I'll be all over the place tonight. Obviously, I watched the video this afternoon with Beth talking about this story that Man United might sell their naming rights. Look, I'm dead against it. I don't want to leave Old Trafford, and I certainly don't want the name to be the Ineos Stadium or something like that. I know that's where football's going. We all do. I know some people might say you've got to get with the times. I mean, if you listen to the podcast this week, apparently Birmingham and Wrexham wanted to play their league game in America because Wrexham are massive there, and Tom Brady owns a bit of in Birmingham, so they wanted to play it in America. The league said no. It's going to happen. La Liga are already going to do it. The NFL do it. They play they play at Spurs, don't they, in October a couple of times a year. This is going to happen. I'm dead against Man United playing a game away from Old Trafford, but I'm telling you now, I will bet you good money in the next 20 years that's going to happen. So the stadium name being whatever it is today, tomorrow, it's going to happen. I don't want it to happen, but again, I'm not going to chain myself to Old Trafford sign saying don't change it. If some people want to do that, I respect it, but it's going to happen. This is life. These things are going to happen. We are going to see a game in New York for the Premier League. We are going to see a game in Sydney. It's going to happen. Like a Super League hopefully never will happen, but these things are going to happen. Naming rights are going to happen. I don't agree with it, but they are going to happen because ultimately, how much power do we have? The Glazers have been at Man United for 20 years. Nobody wants them, and they've been here for 20 years. So let's not pretend that we're really capable of stopping this sort of stuff. The only thing that stops this sort of stuff is having an owner that won't do it. And I think when you're Sir Jim Radcliffe and somebody's willing to give you millions of pounds every year to call a football ground something, morals go out the window a little bit. Will the United, as much as I have reservations about Rashford, we shouldn't sell him this summer, especially if the replacement is not going to be as good as him, says Marvin. The Todibo comment this morning, could that be an argument considering we're not in the EU or a genuine case for pursuing, says Ray. I don't know, we'll have to wait and see how it works out, Ray, I'm hopeful. And Owen says, I doubt it'll happen, but getting Rashford, Sancho and Casemiro gone would go a long way in restructuring our wage structure, says Owen. Well, this is it. I refuse to judge what Ineos are going to do because I don't know what they're going to do, and I don't think anybody knows what they're going to do. But I think you make a very, very good point. If you could remove Rashford, Sancho, Varane, and Casemiro from that wage bill, you've just saved yourself nearly £1.5 million a week. That's like, what's that? 6 million a month. it's £72 million a year. It's a lot of money to save in wages. So yeah, look, I find it interesting that 85% of you would sell Rashford to PSG, and that's the challenge for Marcus Rashford, which I think he can meet, but that's the challenge for Marcus Rashford. 85% of this community would sell you to PSG, and I guarantee you if you did that on X, you'd get the same. I think it would come down a little bit overall in the fan base if you took. But then again, people try and say it's online, but what I know for a fact, is that there's no difference between this community, Twitter, a Man United forum, or if you polled match-going fans, because they're not different. Match-going fans are on Twitter. Match-going fans watch the United stand. Manchester United fans are on forums. Not all of them, but the diversity of it is that everybody's doing everything. Some people are listening to podcasts, some people are on YouTube, some people on TikTok, some people are on Twitter. But, match-going fans do have TikTok. So this, I guarantee you, if it was possible to run a poll of the whole Man United fan base, whether you're 90 or 9, whether you go to games or you've never been, I guarantee you it would be over 70%. Well, maybe 70% would say sell Rashford to PSG. That's the challenge that Marcus Rashford's got, because I don't think he's going anywhere. But that's the challenge he's got to try and turn things around. And the challenge he's got as well is, if he has a good season next season, has he turned it around? Because I think there'll be people out there going, but I've seen him have a good season before. What about the season after that? So he's basically got to have 2 seasons good in a row. Because otherwise, people have very short memories, don't they? And they'll go, oh, here he is again. So I like what he's doing at the moment. I like the fact that he's off social media. I like the fact that he's having a rest. I wish Mainu was. I wish Luke Shaw was. I wish Rasmus was. I wish Garnacho was. But look, that's the victims of having a good season. Rashford didn't have a good season. Mount didn't have a good season. Maguire got injured at the end of the season. So those 3 players should really have a really good pre-season. But he's got to hit the season hard. And look, would I be surprised if Man United sold him? No. Do I expect them to sell him? No. Any updates on Van Nistelrooy? Sell Rashford, says Matthew. Well, tomorrow, I was told today, tomorrow could be double deal day. I'm not saying it's going to happen. I can't be bothered with people who say it's going to happen, this is going to happen. It'll happen when it happens with Ineos. I really don't think that Ineos are putting it out there when they're doing anything, as we saw with the manager. But I was told today that the double deal tomorrow could well be Van Nistelrooy and Ten Hag's new contract at the same time. That there's an appetite to try and do that very, very close together. Now, whether it works together at the exact moment Ten Hag signs a new contract and Van Nistelrooy is the new assistant coach, I think it's got a synergy. I really, really do. But if I was Ten Hag, I might say, well, I'd rather get my own story, thanks, that I've signed the new contract and we can do Van Nistelrooy in a few hours after it or on the next day. But yeah, could be that. With regards to transfers, I mean, Sky have said today that Xerxes edging closer to being completed. Maybe with the Euros after this game tonight, having a couple of days off, it might allow players to, advance some deals that are at the Euros. But Branthwaite and Xerxes, I don't know. How long's a piece of string? I'd love to know when that's going to happen, but I really genuinely don't. Selling Rashford would also send a huge message to the dressing room, says Z3. Well, I said this last summer, didn't I? And obviously we didn't even get taken over, but I am a firm believer that a sacrificial lamb would be huge positive PR for Ineos. At one point, I thought it might be Bruno. At the start of the summer, I thought it was going to be Bruno. Those stories that were coming out were like, there's no smoke without fire here. Fabrizio's talking about it as well. I think that a sacrificial lamb, in the sense of a shock, signing or sale, would do wonders for Ineos's PR. And probably more so if you sell a player that's significant, because I think it sends a message that they're here not to mess about, that they're here to get things done. But whether they'll do that, I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. What's your opinion on Calafiori have done that? I loathe this fan base for wanting Marcus Rashford sold, says Manchild. Born and bred, one of our own, world beater who has had a tough spell after tough times. Patience is a must. I disagree, Manchild, actually. I agree with your wanting him to not to be sold. I agree with the whole born and bred thing because I think that is important to him and the club. I agree with one of our own. Yeah, I agree with that. I agree that when he's on it, he's a world beater and he has had a tough spell. But I completely disagree with patience. Why do Man United need to be patient? Are Man City patient? Was Sir Alex Ferguson patient? No, this is not a charity. It's a football club that has fell on hard times and been nowhere near its domestic title for over a decade. Patience is not a must. And, when you look at certain players, the Harry Maguires, the Bruno Fernandes, the Scott McTominay, the Marcus Rashford, the Delo, you'll note I'm just naming a lot of players here. None of those players need another year. None of them need patience. Now, I'm not saying sell any of those players. I like Bruno and I like a few of those other players. But what I'm saying is, what patience are you talking about? Patience with Mainu or Garnacho or Rasmus, I understand. Even Mason Mount, because he's only been here a year and he's been injured. You've got an Onana. Yeah, patience, I understand. There's a lot of players in that squad that don't need any more patience. They're on the last... They're on the last orders. If they got booted, they wouldn't have any complaints. Well, they would, but they shouldn't. So I don't think we need any more patience. And I think when you're on 150 grand a week, 200 grand a week, 300 grand a week, 250 grand a week, I mean, how much patience do you want? You got to get the job done, mate. Any updates on that? We've done as well. Just on Ugarte. So, look, if we are talking to PSG about numerous players, I couldn't figure out who PSG would be interested in from Manchester United. But, I got a bit excited and thought, well, if Rashford's worth 80 and Ugarte's worth 40, maybe we could get a couple of PSG players for Rashford. But I don't know. I don't know about that. What about Xavi Simons? Well, he is at PSG, isn't he, Metro? So maybe you could get him and Ugarte for Rashford. But Ben Jacobs did say that the initial story around Ugarte was Man United had put an offer in of 25 million and that PSG want 50 million. We're not going to do a swap deal for Rashford, by the way. I mean, if PSG bought Rashford and we bought Ugarte, we should come out with a bit of money in our pocket. But going to Ugarte, I've said everything I think about him and why I'd like him at Manchester United. But that's not what I was told last night. I was told that we'd gone in at around 35 and that PSG want about 50. But Ben Jacobs is saying that we've gone in at 25 and they want around 50. I don't think we'd go in at 25. I mean, he might be right. I'm not saying he's wrong. Ben Jacobs was very good on numerous things around the sale, but 25 feels like a little bit of a piss take. And, it's almost like you're going to have to put a second bid in. And what I was told is we'd gone in at 35 because we felt it was a good deal. And that PSG might sniff at it. But if you go in at 25, they bought him for 60 a year ago, and he's 23. We're never going to get him for 25. So, there's no guarantee we're even going to go back in for Ugarte. As Fabrizio explained, and as we were talking about this morning, it wasn't an official bid, but official bids don't necessarily go in that often. You have a lot of conversations where the director of football of PSG and the director of football of Manchester United, or whoever that is at the moment, would have a conversation, and be going, look, we like the look at... Basically, what's happened with Ugarte is quite similar to what's happened to Branthwaite, but at a much earlier level. We've spoken to Everton, who've shown a willingness to do a deal at the right price. Branthwaite has then been spoken to, and he's shown a willingness to come to Manchester United, and we're trying to figure out that price. With PSG... we're not even at the point where we've spoken to Ugarte yet. We've basically had the chat with PSG about whatever we're talking to them about. I think there's numerous things. And look, we've said, look, are you open to selling Ugarte? They've said yes at the right price. And we've said, well, what about 35 million? And they've said it's not quite enough. And that's where we're at the moment. So are we going to go back in again? We'll have to wait and see. We'll have to wait and see. But I hope we do. I saw... I don't know who it was. It might have been Swedish Rumble on X, but it was somebody I follow. And they were saying, Ugarte would be a very, very good signing for Manchester United. But also, Man United miss that personality of Martinez when he's not there. And Ugarte would bring some of that personality into that midfield, which is, desperately missing. I mean, look, we talk about Rashford and Casemiro last season, our two best players the season before. Last season, both seemed to have a personality transplant. But what was really disappointing about Casemiro was not only that his football was bad, but his influence as a leader were terrible. Absolutely terrible. I mean, nobody talks about that enough. Casemiro as a player was a massive loss, but also as a leader, that evaporated as well. Forget buying a new striker, Mark. Let's just put Rude up front and get him the service he needs. We can definitely make it far. I know Rude hasn't fallen off. Age is just temporary. Class is forever. I tell you what, I think I'm gonna faint in a minute. I can't even get my bloody words out. I think anyone on 250k a week is sold to restructure the wages, says Dave. I mean, look, that is a strategy I can get on board with, Dave. Do I think there's any truth in it? No. But it is problematic for Manchester United because when you look at the wage bill at the moment, you've got our biggest earners right now, before the end of the season, would have been Marcus Rashford, Casemiro, Varane and Sancho, all on 300k a week or roughly that. Bit more, maybe a bit less. Sancho we're trying to get rid of. Casemiro we're trying to get rid of. Varane's already gone. And Rashford. Now, if you get rid of Casemiro, Sancho and Varane and Rashford remains, or you get rid of Rashford, Sancho and Varane and Casemiro stays, you've got a problem. Because you've got a squad all under 250 grand a week. And you've got one player who's on way more than everybody else. And if I know it, and you know it, then that dressing room definitely knows it. Because their agent's job is to know what they're being paid and trying to get them a new contract. So it will be something that, from a financial point of view, Ineos will want to solve, but it will make it uncomfortable for them in the future if they have one or two players that are on a different level financially. At the moment, a lot of our squad is centred between 100 and 250k a week. I'd say probably 70% of it is between 100 and 250k a week. And then you've got some outliers who are on less than 100 grand a week, and you've got some outliers who are on more than that. And if you want to go next summer when you've qualified for the Champions League and you want to go and get, Benfica's best player or PSG's best player or Juventus's best player, they're going to walk in and go, we want 250 grand a week. And United will go, that's the top of our wage structure. Bruno's not even on that. And then they'll go, yeah, but Casemiro is, or Rashford is. So it is problematic. Dave raises a good point. Ideally, you want to get... If I was Ineos, I would want Bruno Fernandes to be the top earner. And I think you'd want to put him on 250. And then you just say, nobody's earning more than Bruno. It's never going to happen. And it would make everything a lot easier because when you go to Michael Elise and say, we want to sign you, but we're only going to give you 200 grand a week, and he goes, I want 260, you go, you're not having more than Bruno. It's not happening. Anyway, let me move on. There is more to discuss. We've been linked to Ndoye, the Swiss player who scored a goal in the Euros. We've been linked to Ndoye by not Dimarzio, but Dimarzio has a website and a team. And they basically said that Manchester United have inquired with Bologna about Ndoye. Now, Ndoye is... I'm looking at the wrong piece of paper. It's all going wrong tonight. Ndoye is Luca Bendini, who works with Dimarzio, is saying that Man United have inquired about Ndoye with Bologna. Well, two things I would say there. First of all, Ndoye is 23, right-footed, predominantly a winger, I would say, but has got connections with Ineos because he was at Nice and he was on loan with Lausanne, who Nice own as well. He left Nice to go to Basel, and then last summer he went to Bologna from Basel. So an interesting player. You might have seen him in the Euros. That's about it. I don't believe we're looking at him. You've got to bring these things in because next week you're putting in a bid in and you go, oh, remember where it started. You've got to mention it. But I think that it's very, very easy to link Ndoye to Manchester United for 3 reasons. 4 reasons, actually. 1, Gary, we're Manchester United. Everybody links us to Manchester United. 2, we were trying to buy Elise, who's a winger, and so is Ndoye. Yeah? 3, he's playing in the Euros. That will be enough to link people to Man United. And 4, and probably the real reason, we are in talks with Bologna to buy Xerxes. So it's not hard to say that Man United have spoken to Bologna about Ndoye. And I wouldn't be surprised if we get a story in the next few days that we've spoken to Bologna about Calafiori as well, because he's at Bologna. When the bottom line is, I reckon the only player we're talking to Bologna about is Xerxes. But when Man United are talking to Bologna representatives and you need to write a story, you can have a right laugh, can't you? Because, Ndoye plays for Bologna. We know Man United are talking to Bologna. Man United are talking to, so I would file this as nothing. I don't see it. We've never heard anything about him up until the last week and Man United, and that's because we're talking to Bologna about Xerxes. He's playing in the Euros. He's done quite well, and he's a winger, and we're Manchester United. I don't believe anything about it. I really, really don't. What else have we got? We spoke about that. Oh, Kerkez, the left back. So this story came out from Ben Jacobs as well, that Manchester United, Chelsea and Arsenal are looking at Kerkez, the Hungarian left back who plays for Bournemouth. Now, we have been linked to him a lot over the last few weeks, way before the Euros. He is believed to be a player that Manchester United are looking at. £35 million is what Bournemouth want for him. I think it's excessive. I don't think it's right. I don't know about you, but I genuinely do not think that is the right player at left back for £35 million, especially when Luke Shaw is still in the game as well. So I don't think that he is the right player for Manchester United at that price. I've got to say, I thought he had a good season for Bournemouth last year in a Bournemouth side that did really, really well. But I just don't like that deal at all. Owen says, I really do like Kerkez. He's decent, but I just don't feel comfortable spending £35 million on him. I mean, he would basically cost us the same as Frimpong, and I know they're different positions, but I just don't feel comfortable with it. He's only 20. I was just checking his age there, because for some reason I thought he was 23. I mean, at 20 years of age, he's got a lot of potential in him, but again, I don't think that makes him a £35 million player. This would be an add-ons deal for me. I'd be looking at 20 million quid and then putting some add-ons into it. But the fact that Arsenal are looking at him, they want a left back. I would presume he is out of our reach in relation to price-wise, because he's certainly not a £35 million left back. And from a Manchester United point of view, whether people like it or not, in my mind, Luke Shaw is still one of the best left backs in Europe when he's fit. And he's our left back, and he's our first choice left back. So if you spend £35 million on a left back, what you're doing with Luke Shaw, who can't be sold, who is on over 150 grand a week, and Luke Shaw's contract is massive, by the way. I see people saying, let's sell Luke Shaw, which I would never do. I think he's absolutely, crucial to Manchester United. And the biggest problem we have is just the fact that he's injured all the time. But Luke Shaw only signed a contract last year. He's on his contract doesn't run out till 2027. It's 3 years, and people forget this sort of stuff. Luke Shaw has got a 3-year deal, 3 years, and he's on around 150 grand a week. So how do you sell Luke Shaw? 3 years, 150 grand a week. You need somebody to come in and go, we're going to give you £20 million for Luke Shaw, and we're also going to pay Luke Shaw 150 grand a week for the next 3 years. Nobody's going to do that. Nobody can afford to do that. So Luke Shaw is a big, big, big part of our future, because he has to be. And therefore, I'm not spending £35 million on a left back and watching Luke Shaw sit on our bench for the next 3 years on 150 grand a week. Look, I feel sorry for Ineos. I've said this before. I feel sorry for Ineos because it's like what Sir Jim Ratcliffe said in that interview. He was asked about, are there more problems than you thought before you came into the club? And he said something about, you lift the bonnet up and you get a few surprises. But he does speak a bit like that as well, You lift the bonnet up and you get a few surprises.
But we expected that, me and Dave. And we'll work with what we've got. But you lift the bonnet up and, you know, you get a few surprises.
And he's right. And I think when he's lifting that bonnet up, he is seeing, okay, we can't necessarily sell everybody. And we're stuck with some problems that are going to be here for quite a while. Do you think it's curtains for Steve McClaren if Ruud's announced, says Alan. Hello, Alan. I don't know. With Steve McClaren, he's a very popular person. I think Steve McClaren's been quite an important part of Man United in his time there. And, you know, I think Mike Phelan was getting ridiculed at the end. But I think Steve McClaren has been a good link between Ten Hag and the players because he's been there. He's worked with Sir Alex before. I suspect that, like Darren Fletcher, they probably would find a role for Steve McClaren. But I think Van der Geeg, I don't know what would happen with him because there was talk of him going, but obviously that job for Ajax is gone now. So, yeah, I don't know. I don't know what's likely to happen with Steve McClaren, to be honest with you. Max says, have you seen the news on selling our naming rights to raise some funds? Yeah, load of bollocks, mate. Not happy about that. But what can you do? What can you do? What's the latest on Amrabat, says Ian. I think we'll know in the next week because, again, I don't know the exact date Man United are back in pre-season training for the players that, you know, haven't played in the Euros. But I would imagine probably, I think United will be back in training middle of next week. Maybe end of next week. Maybe start of the next week. I don't know. Just tuned in. About 85% selling Rashford in the poll is wild, says Goldio. It is a lot. It is a lot. It is a lot. But it's not surprising. He's got a lot of work to do, hasn't he? To win people back. A left field, left back choice. Doherty from Luton, says Tyler. Yeah. What I think the left back we need to bring in is somebody that is, you know, basically Malacia. A cheap-ish left back who is young and has potential is what we need. Because if you go for a finished article, I just don't know how it's going to work. I really don't. Anyway, look, Ronaldo is playing for Portugal, but it's Turkey against Czech Republic to see. Well, we're going to find out how England plays tonight, aren't we? Because the Netherlands are looking like England's opponent on Sunday. But if Czech Republic beat Turkey or Georgia get something against Portugal, then they could be playing England on Sunday. Anyway, I'll explain it all in a couple of minutes. I'm live on That's Football now. No, I'm not now, but I will be in a minute. Join me over there for the final game of the group stage in the Euros. Looking forward to that. Legends tonight. I've got through it with my burnt tongue. Thanks for your participation. Thanks for getting involved. Make sure you subscribe and smash a like. And I will be back with you on the United Stand at 10 o'clock tomorrow morning, unless something happens tonight. But I'm going to That's Football. I'll see you over there in a couple of minutes.